I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism.
The Wrestling Life.
Hey everybody, it's The Wrestling Life. It's episode 397. We're back. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Liam.
Liam, you have so much to talk about this week.
And as always, so many things we can't talk about on the first and only wrestling podcast. Welcome back, Crab fans.
You know, I wonder what the wrestling podcast listener has done without new episodes for almost a month here.
It's a great question. That could be our action item of the week. You can tweet us and let us know. But yeah, heavy is the head, but even that's probably too far for a joke. I was gonna say even the Lord rested on the seventh day, but that's probably that might be a little bit too far.
Oh, we definitely can't say that, no. But yeah, we're back, and I'm thinking of giving up sports. I say this as a fan of the Baltimore Ravens. Say this as a fan of the Baltimore Orioles. I'm just thinking of giving up on sports.
It does feel like we'd all be happier, right?
Yeah. I was thinking, of all the years I've been rooting for these teams. I was a Broncos fan before the Ravens got to town, so I did celebrate 2 Broncos Super Bowls, and I've celebrated 2 Ravens Super Bowls, and 1 Maryland Terrapins college basketball national championship 24 years ago. And it's like, well, all right, that's 5 championships in a lot of years. And other than that, it's just a lot of heartbreak. Not a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on sports or giving up sports?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the thing. Only one team's fans gets to be happy when it's all over, I guess. I don't have the thing in me where I I can really vociferously root against another team, even if I don't really like them.
Sure.
I don't particularly care to see the Chiefs win a 3rd Super Bowl, but it's just not, I'm not going to get a great deal of joy if they lose to the Bills or to whoever wins the NFC.
Yeah.
It's fine. It'd be nice to see somebody else win, but it will not really improve my mood if the Chiefs win or lose the Super Bowl. So yeah, I don't have that in me. I think some people, that's like their secondhand enjoyment of sports, is rooting against other teams. And I don't, like I said, I can enjoy that. I can appreciate it at a certain level, but yeah, really the only true happiness as a sports fan is if your team does the thing, and you have like 1 in 32 chance in football and a 1 in 30 chance in baseball. Not literally, but like that's how many teams there are.
Yeah.
Like only one fan base gets to be happy, and to your point, it has very rarely been Baltimore-based fan bases that have been the happy ones, unless you extend it to like being a fan of the Washington Capitals, who had a really good soccer team, or our very, very good, our most dominant sports franchise in this city. It was our indoor soccer team for a very long time.
Yeah, that was embarrassing. That was embarrassing. Here's the thing that I never understood about the local indoor soccer team. They would claim attendance of like 5,000 people every night. And I'm like, there is no way. What could draw indoor soccer is not drawing 5,000 people a night? I assume there were a lot of comps in there, but anyway.
Sure.
Anyway, that's not what you call it. This is the wrestling life. I did pick up Premier League soccer a couple of years ago, and my team did win championships like the first 3 years, so that was cool.
Nice.
But they're not very good this year, so no joy in that fake sport either. Speaking of fake sports and questionable attendance and gate numbers, AEW, WWE is on the road to a Saturday night's main event special this coming weekend, and then the Royal Rumble the following weekend. There's some scuttlebutt about Alexa Bliss, AEW. They're building both Grand Slam and kind of Revolution. They're in a pay-per-view desert right now. No pay-per-views from the end of December until like March 9th or whatever.
Mhm.
So very, very strange there. Let's start with WWE stuff. Saturday night's main event. What do you think about this program? We have a Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens segment with the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. And we will have Gunther defending his World Heavyweight Championship against the Yeet Man. We have Braun Strowman against Jacob Fatu. And we have Rhea Ripley versus Nia Jax for the women's. Is that can't be correct? When was that announced?
After Nia beat up Rhea on Monday, I think.
Huh? What do you know about that? I'm learning all sorts of new things here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Rhea Ripley, Nia Jax, Braun Strowman, Jacob Fatu, Braun Breaker, and Sheamus, Gunther Jey Uso, and the Cody Rhodes segment. What do you think of the build to this program? Has it been effective? WWE debuted on Netflix while we were away. Just any thoughts on the kind of the current state of WWE product?
I mean, this one feels like a big afterthought compared to, and we talked about this leading up to the first one that this is always how it ends up,
Yes.
but it got sandwiched between the Netflix debut and the Royal Rumble, which is like the second most important show of the year. So, I think they just like the Jacob Fatu Braun thing and the Rhea Nia thing, they just kind of threw together at the last minute here. So, um,
Eight,
yeah,
yeah,
it
eight,
doesn't
eight.
feel
Sorry.
particularly doesn't feel particularly important at the moment.
Sure. They 8 days billed for Strowman and Fatu, and it was just kind of a throwaway angle to your point. And Rhea Ripley and Nia Jax, 5 days build, and I wasn't even sure that it was on the show. So there you go. As for shooting an angle for the Royal Rumble, I assume that's what they're doing with Cody and Kevin and Shawn Michaels in there.
Shawn taking a bump.
You'd think, right?
Yeah, I think he's the they did that segment with Shawn and Hogan with Lawler as the moderator that one time, and where Shawn super kicks Lawler at the end
Yes.
because he's not going to lay out Hogan again.
Yes.
Uh, I think Shawn's Lawler now. I think he's graduated
Oh
to
man.
being the old man who gets roughed up in the by the vicious heel.
This is neither here nor there, but since you mentioned Lawler, Jeff Jarrett brought up Jerry Lawler trying to get a cheap babyface pop in Tennessee on his AEW promo this week. And Hogan-esque reaction for Jerry the King Lawler. It really warms my heart because as talented as Lawler was at every aspect of professional wrestling and professional wrestling commentary, one of the more despicable human beings to ever walk the planet.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys who I think is lucky enough that his scandals broke in the 90s
Yeah.
when it became a punchline and a little insider dig a wrestler he's feuding with could throw at him, as opposed to it being an actionable crime that he should maybe face scrutiny for.
Yeah.
Yeah, bad dude.
Yeah. Really, really rotten human being. Anyway, that's not what you call it either. Royal Rumble, they're adding a lot of there's a lot of dudes announced for the Royal Rumble,
Mhm.
and really not very many women announced for the Women's Royal Rumble. And they have officially announced, I think Bailey is only the official announcement, although Nia Jax clearly is running around on every show and attacking everyone, so I think Nia Jax is in it as well. But as far as official announcements, I've only seen a graphic for Bailey. Whereas the men's rumble, a lot of star power in that one. I assume we're getting all of the Women's Revolution icons like Medusa and Leah and Trish and
Mhm.
Victoria and all those folks in the Women's Rumble. But thoughts on the build to the Royal Rumble so far?
Yeah, I mean the men's rumble feels very important. Everybody's talking about if you're not in a title match at that show, you are talking about the match and wanting to be in it and wanting to win it. And you got Punk and you got Cena and you got all the all the rank and file full-time guys all talking about it. So yeah, it's exciting. Like it feels like the most star-studded Rumble in a while, as far as it being mostly full time guys. And Roman's in it this year, which, hey, anytime the most important guy is in the Rumble, feels a little bit more important. So, yeah, I think the men's build has been pretty good. Women's build, the build is that Charlotte Flair is coming back. To me, they're not bothering because Charlotte's probably going to win it, I think, and challenge Tiffany Stratton, I would think. But yeah, I think they're yeah, probably going to rely on surprises, some NXT names, and you go from there. But yeah, it has not felt much like, I would say, most of the last year of Paul Levesque's World Wrestling Federation. Women's division does not feel like a priority right now on television. But hey, you can bring back a lot of names from the past, and that'll make people happy, I suppose. At least there will be music that people will recognize when it hits.
That is a positive. Yeah. Um, Bailey's on every show just doing jobs.
Mm-hmm.
She lost to the new women's champion Tiffany Stratton on SmackDown, and then lost to Nia Jax on Raw.
So fun.
Uh,
They made a big deal about this transfer window over the last month. Said it
yes,
10 trillion times on television.
yes,
Bailey officially transferred to Raw this week. Nia
yes,
Jax is on SmackDown. She's just also on Raw now.
yeah, yeah. You can do that, I guess.
And it's WrestleMania season. This always happens, but why? I guess my question is always, why do it now? It's fake. It's not a real sport. You don't have to do your whatever you're calling your draft this year in January. You can wait until after WrestleMania to do it.
Right. Just end your stupid brand split. That doesn't mean anything
You can
anyway.
also do that.
Why would you cut half of your roster in half? Handcuff yourself if you don't need to. I,
Right. And you have enough star power that you can still split guys up so that they don't have to work both shows every week.
yeah, you don't
But
have
you
to
don't
make an.
have to officially declare, or
Yes,
one guy is SmackDown, one guy is Raw.
yes. Strowman versus Fatu at the Saturday night's main event show. Jacob Fatu kills the big sticky giant.
Yeah, I think so. I think Braun has entered his enhancement talent era, and yeah, the Timu bloodline needs a little bit of a shot in the arm after officially being conquered by Roman at the first Netflix Raw. So yeah, let build Jacob up as the new face of that group, and let him just beat everybody for a while.
Sure. When's Bill Goldberg showing up? Because I've been told Gunther's wrestling Bill Goldberg at some point. It just hasn't happened yet. And like Goldberg's been on TV once in the last 3 years. So when's Bill Goldberg showing up?
I mean, the Rumble would make sense, wouldn't it?
Sure would. That it would. Braun Breaker and Sheamus. Sheamus, I don't know, man. I don't know what we're doing here exactly. I don't think Braun Breaker's losing the Intercontinental Championship, but also I don't know why. I don't know why we're still doing this. Why are there only two guys for Braun to feud with, and they're Ludwig Kaiser and they're Sheamus?
That's a good question. Uh, another victim of this arbitrarily enforced brand split, because certainly you could match him up against. Not that the matches would be great, but there's an LA Knight who's been kind of floating around doing nothing for 6 months. You could put him in there with Braun. You could sure there's other people on SmackDown that you could match up with Braun as well. Braun's also this weird tweener character, so you could also put him against other heels too if you wanted to. But yeah, I don't know. They just keep doing it. They just keep doing this over and over and over. And the matches aren't bad, but yeah, we've seen it a lot. I'm not sure what else they have to show unless it is a title change here.
Yeah, and they've kind of dropped the talking point of Sheamus has never been Intercontinental Champion before, but there's that too.
True.
So I don't know. Not sure what to make of this Alexa Bliss contract story PW Insider is reporting this week. It's kind of the other big news item in WWE. It's somebody reported Alexa Bliss is coming back. I've never been convinced she's coming back just because why would you? And then PW Insider reports this week that they wanted Alexa to come back for Raw in San Jose, maybe on the 8th or the whatever day that was, the 6th, and or whatever, and she just didn't. She didn't. And that the reason for that was that her representation had contacted WWE and said they wanted a new contract. And WWE was under the impression that she was going to be working under her old contract, which they froze when she went on maternity leave. I've never been convinced she's coming back because she doesn't strike me as someone who particularly loves the performance art of professional wrestling and this business and taking bumps on the back of her head. And I don't know. Thoughts on Alexa Bliss and this report?
Yeah, so it's I think the wording of the report is interesting because it's like once they've figured out that she wasn't going to drop the contract thing, that's when they decided not to take her to TV or not to put her back on TV. It's like there's a weird wording in that PW Insight report, either because the person who wrote it isn't a great writer or because like she was willing to come to TV, but under the impression that we will be working on a new deal, and they're like, no, we got a while to go before we want to work out a new deal with you. So regardless, she's not back, and I believe recently removed all mentions of WWE from her social medias. So yeah, I don't know why you need to come back. If you're her, she can, I'm sure, find other avenues for success. And she has a famous-ish husband. And now she's a mom. I'm sure, yeah, I don't know what going back on the road if you don't need the money does for you. And I mean, we talked about this a little bit off the air. She was not a pushed act in Paul Levesque's NXT. She didn't become a pushed act until she got to the main roster. And then she was the pushed act in the women's division for several years. So I don't know that if I were her, that I would have a great deal of faith that I'm going to be creatively satisfied if I come back, especially if they were going to put her with the Wyatt group, which I assume they would at least have to at the start.
Yeah, you'd have to address that, sure.
But yeah, I don't know if she would be spooky Alexa Bliss again. That does nothing for me. And if she was going to be regular Alexa Bliss, that also doesn't really do a lot for me. So I don't know where she would fit in creatively, other than the fact that you kind of just need bodies in that women's division because it feels so underbaked right now.
Sure.
You could certainly use someone with that name recognition and star power just back on the show as a presence and as a fresh face. But long term, yeah, I don't have a lot of faith that she'd be used prominently, and maybe she doesn't either. So, and in the meantime, since she's been out, as we've talked about when they've come up, a lot of people have been signing new contracts and getting paid big money. So she also maybe looked at that and went, price is going up. You need to pay me according to what the current market is, not to what I signed 2 years ago or whenever she last resigned.
Absolutely. I have no issues with kind of anyone's stance on this. WWE getting mad and pulling her creative or whatever the terminology was. It's
Yeah,
like, well, all right. Hey, they say, hey, you have a contract, which historically only means something to them. And from her side, say, yeah, why am I going to leave the house for 2021 money when I when when the Eat Man's getting paid, right? So yeah, so there you go. Um, kind of glossed over the Raw Netflix premiere. That show was absolutely awful.
terrible.
It was so bad. It was just over a shade over 3 hours, but I think the Raw since then have been pretty good. Um,
Well, they've been shorter for one, which is always a plus.
they've been right around 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 35 minutes, 2 hours 32 minutes, something like that. Um, other than heel New Day, kind of stinking up the joint. And I'm not
Yeah,
even really against the idea of heel New Day at this point. It's just maybe the execution is very lacking. I don't know.
they when they did that turn, I mean, that was one of the most universally praised segments I'd seen in years.
Yeah,
And they got crazy heat.
yeah.
And then they stood around for 2 months. And then they finally had a match and immediately got beat by Rey Mysterio, who Paul Levesque has not pushed at all. Um, so yeah, they completely uh they just decided, and look, they're a tag team in a company that doesn't care about tag teams.
Yep.
Uh they are I'm not going to there are accusations about how certain people are booked under Paul Levesque that I'm not going to discuss too deeply. But
Well,
yeah,
I mean, I don't have a problem
there are
saying
guys
that.
on the other television show who have implied things about how Paul Levesque books black talent.
Yes.
Um, that's a factual statement. It's not me saying that I agree with it, but
Right.
yeah. And Kofi and Woods, like I said, seemed to be finally had a fresh coat of paint on. Finally, after this very stale New Day act had been going on as a dead in the water babyface tag team for a couple of years since Big E was out, finally felt like we had something here. And look, maybe we're just spinning our wheels until if and when Big E is coming back, which everyone assumed was happening when they did that first angle.
Yeah.
And I assume it's still happening. But until then, yeah, it feels like they really had something. Like at the minimum, it feels like they should have run over some tag teams and probably been the champions for whenever Big E comes back to challenge them, but they have not. Instead, they walked around and were disallowed from changing in dressing rooms and then got beat by Rey Mysterio. So yeah, not not anyone's best effort since that initial very praised segment.
Oh. Raw this week has the kid with the big head and
Matt Menard.
the other one, JD McDonough
Oh yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
teaming with Dirty Dom against the Viking Raiders, the War Raiders. Ugh. That's what's on the show instead of a new heel New Day act. The Viking Raiders. I got nothing against the Viking Raiders. They seem like nice gentlemen, but
Mm-hmm.
what? Anyway, the Judgment Day too. I don't know. I don't know why Raquel Rodriguez or Carlito are in the Judgment Day. I really don't. I assume Finn Balor went home to get his visa renewed, and he kind of sometimes, usually December, January every year, disappears for 3 or 4 weeks, goes home to Ireland for a
Mm-hmm.
month, which is cool. Um, other than that, yeah. I think we covered most of the important WWE stuff here. I think, other than they've formally extended their partnership with TNA.
Oh yeah.
Jordan Grace is already in Orlando. At the Performance Center, she's left after her match with Tessa at the TNA Genesis pay-per-view. I don't know. Is this just trying to avoid an antitrust lawsuit, or is this they actually think there's some use in having another place they can send people that aren't ready to work yet?
I mean, yeah, it's. I mean, if there's any indication here in how they've used TNA talent on NXT, it's a way to use people that you don't have under contract and introduce them to your audience
Yeah.
before they sign with you. Yeah, you can use them as a feeder system. It's also a way to send some people who have maybe plateaued, shall we say, in NXT down to work with some of their better workers, and maybe get better, hopefully. And yeah, and then there's also the whole prop up a different non WWE company that you still kind of control as a way to f with other companies that you don't like. So there's always that factor of it too. So yeah, I mean it makes sense. It's good for TNA. It's good for WWE has a place to send their wrestlers to work besides a warehouse in Orlando. And yeah, it seems like it makes sense as a way for them to just farm out and just like I said, just take anybody that they want and feature them on NXT for a year before their contract is up, and then just sign them away when they are actually free. So it makes sense, and yeah, good luck to everyone. The history of promotions who partner with WWE, not a great history. Like things haven't gone well for most promotions that have partnered with the World Wrestling Federation across history, but it might work for them.
Sure. I doubt it will rain at all. All right. Any other WWE stuff jumping out at you that you want to discuss before we move on to the AEW stuff here?
Well, as a transition here, Penta is now the hottest new star on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
Gets a big entrance, gets a showcase match on the first 2 weeks so far. I assume he'll be in the Rumble, mixing up. Hopefully, he and Punk can reenact some of their spots from their AEW classic. Yeah, no, it's a good impression. It was interesting because I might have been PW Insider again or Fightful or one of those places being like, yeah, there's some talents in WWE that are like feel like whenever a shiny new toy from the other place comes in, they're kind of pushed down. It's like, yes, this is a wrestling war, and this is how this goes when there's another major company. So now when your deal's up, you'll have the opportunity to go be the shiny new toy on somebody else's TV if you want, or you could just take the money. Either way. But it's like, yeah, this is part of it. It's like as new people are going to flood in, older established talent will be either asked to do jobs for those incoming talent, or will just be featured much less on the show.
Indeed. Also, no one is as cool as Penta.
True. Hey,
So
they had masks and shirts immediately, by the way.
something the other company never did.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's one of those things because immediately it's like everyone always talks about how Penta was a great heel in Lucha Underground. So, like, you should have him be a heel and go after like Ray and Dragon Lee and the other luchadors and stuff. It's like, yeah, but look at him. That guy is designed to sell merchandise.
Yes.
And it's harder to do that if he's a crazy person who breaks people's arms and makes children cry, as opposed to him just being a fun luchador who looks cool as hell. So he's got to be a babyface for like at least a year here before we start thinking about any grand designs on a heel Pentagon coming in.
The turnaround time on the action figures is so long.
Yes.
That it probably has to be 2 years.
Agreed. Yeah.
Like Mattel will announce a new series of action figures. They just randomly did some like last week for some reason. Like, why are we announcing stuff in the middle of January? I don't know. But like those will hit stores Next January.
Correct.
What?
You really rush one. I mean, they're just now putting CM Punks on the shelf. He came
Why
back
does it
in
take a
November of
year?
23. Well, he's an
Yeah.
interesting one because you'd think they'd still have old mold. I guess they did rush out like an old mold of him with like the straight edge society gear as like a flashback figure
Yeah.
before then. But
Hmm.
as far as like a modern day punk, it took them almost a year, if not a full year, to get him out. And maybe he's more complicated because of all the tattoos and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
generally speaking, you can expect at least 9 months to a year to get. I mean, it took them a long time to get a Cody out too, which was honestly probably a boon for AEW, who still had a ton of Cody merchandise on store shelves. So
Yep. Yep. 1,000%. Um, the problem with a lot of my AEW ideas, as I mentioned to you off the air, is that often I say things that are in lockstep with the grifters, like the Bully Rays
sure.
and Mark Henrys and Eric Bischoffs and Jim Cornette's and people like that. And really, I swear, if AEW did something good, unlike those guys, I would say it was good.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, but they need someone bigger than Pro Wrestling Tees to handle their merchandise, and we're like year 6 now, and we're selling more merchandise. Apparently not.
Yeah, I don't.
Anyway, that's my only statement on that.
Yeah, I don't understand why we're still doing like print to order in a out of like a screen printing shop in Chicago. Like, I don't know what we're doing here, man.
Yeah. Sorry, I got a message about my internet connection, and there's some lag. Anyway, we'll just try to get through the rest here and hope everything works out. AEW, as we mentioned on the build to Grand Slam Australia, we have 2 matches for that show. It's Mariah May against Tony Storm, and it's Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay against Konosuke Takeshita and AEW's Ludwig Kaiser, Kyle Fletcher. Thoughts on the build for this show so far?
Uh, look, they're treating it like a Saturday night's main event type show. Like, I mean, that's what it is. It's airing in the Collision spot, just under a different name. It's not airing live, obviously, with the time difference in Australia. So, yeah, it doesn't feel particularly important, but I don't know. It feels slightly more important than Battle of the Belts ever did, if that's the lowest possible compliment I could pay it.
Well, if I could just chime in with from the beginning of this year, from their first Fight for the Fall and Dynamite that simulcast on Max, all the billboards around the arena are promoting, not all. There might have been a Grand Slam sign in the ceiling, but like their video wall is already promoting Revolution, which is the
Mhm.
March 9th show. There, it is that when they announced Grand Slam Australia, it was going to be in a soccer stadium, and then it's been moved to like a concert hall since then because they don't have much of a television presence in Australia, and so they have begun treating the show as such, and I guess it's a shame, but I don't know. Hey, if Don Callis weren't involved, I would probably praise the Osprey and Omega and Don Callis family stuff. Unfortunately, Don Callis is involved. So
I would say he has talked minimally over the course of this, which has helped it. I think the focus has been on Omega being back and him and Osprey uniting despite their past differences. So it's probably been better that it's focused more on Will and Kenny, not in a there it isn't the traditional can they coexist thing. It's like these are two men that have wronged each other in the past and they're trying to suss each other out to figure out if one of them's going to turn on the other, was kind of the context I thought of their promo. So I liked that. And then they did a big wild brawl and they did big moonsaults off of stuff, which was fun. So look, they've done much worse with things involving Don Callis. So
like almost everything. Yeah.
yeah.
The Death Riders just permeate the Wednesday show, the Saturday show. The rated R superstar Adam Copeland and Jay White are standing up to the Death Riders.
Pardon me, his name is Cope. He's the rated R superstar Cope. One word, like Madonna.
What was there was a social media post this week from one of the prominent wrestling ex personalities that was like, Cope's new gimmick is he goes around explaining why his name is Cope. It's like, yeah, he kind of has to. Yeah. But hey, this Death Rider stuff, it's rotten. And not only is it rotten, it's all over every show and it's getting worse. Thoughts?
It's just it's gotten to a point where, like, one, it's boring because it's just Moxley cuts a nonsensical promo and then they just lay out the baby faces every week. And the beatings are not particularly interesting. Like the first couple beatings when they were beating up Top Flight and Daniel Garcia and Private Party and stuff were at least kind of entertaining because those guys were taking crazy bumps for him. Sure. Now they're beating up Adam Copeland and FTR every week, and it's just not very interesting.
Rock and Roll Express.
For some reason, people keep getting tied up and gagged.
It's mildly sexy. What?
It is.
What?
Dax and Cash all tied up again.
Huh?
But but look, it's not good. Also, I don't. This was sort of all I felt like came to a head as far as like internet fan ire when on this past week's Collision they booked a match where the Death Riders teamed with Chris Jericho's crew to fight a menagerie of baby faces.
Yes.
And everyone in the world went, hang on. At the start of Mox's thing that he's been doing, his whole thing was that he hates bullshit. He hates sports entertainment. He's a wrestler and a grappler and a shooter.
Yeah.
And he only wants tough, hard men around him.
And Marina
Shafir, his girlfriend.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with his wife, who is also on the show. But no one ever addresses that her husband is running around killing people.
Accurate.
Anyway, so, and now he's teaming with like the biggest goofball act on the whole show, and they're not really. It's just thrown out there as a match.
Yeah.
And they, within the body of the match, they do some things where like, oh, they're not getting along, but it's like ultimately, why would he even agree to take that match?
Yes.
Like the whole thing is he runs the whole show because he has the belt and he can do whatever he wants, I assume, which is why he's not being arrested for killing Darby Allin or killing the Rock and Roll Express twice or killing FTR or killing whoever else he's killed recently.
I mean, there was also an implied.
You imply. To be clear, you were the one making the implication, but yes.
There was an implied essay of bald FTR.
Jesus. Yeah. So there's the point is there's a plethora of real crimes committed on this show beyond just, hitting a wrestling move on a guy that you would assume Mox is allowed to do because he's the champion and thus is somehow protected through his contract as champion. I don't know. It never makes sense, but that's always the logic. That's pro wrestling logic. AEW didn't invent that. I can forgive that. But given that's the case, if this guy can do whatever he wants, why would he show up for that match? Why wouldn't he and his crew just beat everybody's ass? Why would he stand on the apron and tag in and out with Chris Jericho and pay any attention to this circus clown that's in front of him? It doesn't make sense. And if the idea is, well, ultimately he's a heel and he's a hypocrite, and so he's doing this because even though Jericho is a joke, he's teaming with him because he's trying to hide behind them so he doesn't have to fight Cope and whoever else he's scared of. Okay, well, that would be something I would maybe tell my announcers to be like hammering him on constantly. Like that this guy isn't actually here to do what he says he's doing, and he's a coward and he's hiding behind whoever he can to avoid having to fight these guys fairly. Because you could do that, but that's a different story than the story you told us at the start of all of this. So if you're telling a different story now, you need to tell us that the story has changed.
Yes. An informative video package would suss all this out. I say that somewhat jokingly, but
Right.
I would like everyone to restate their objectives in this story. We think the Rated R superstar Cope wants the AEW World Championship. All right, great. So that's why he's engaged with John Moxley here. FTR, they are Cope's little buddies, so they're there to help.
Right.
What does Jay White want in this story? I'm not sure. I think the world title, as you told me off the air, I think it's the world title.
He did state when he came back from injury, he had a list of things that he was taking care of. One of them was Christian, one of them was Hangman, and then he wanted the world title. And he challenged for the world title in December and lost, and I assume got like beat up and laid out after. So he was coming back for revenge. Fine. But again, that wasn't really stated. Like it was like Jay White ran out to save Adam Copeland and also got laid out.
Yes.
And there wasn't like a, oh my God, we haven't seen Jay White since World's End. Because if I'm honest, I can't remember if he's been on the show or not since.
Who could?
Since then. So yeah,
Who could?
it would be good for him. Perhaps him and Cope can have a promo face to face, and they can state their objectives here. And also, if they're both going after the title, there's also a thing where Jeff Jarrett is going to wrestle Claudio next week, and if Jeff Jarrett beats Claudio, then he gets a world title shot.
Yes.
Which you have one of three possible men that could challenge Mox. And based on this being where it is geographically, you'd think maybe it would be Jay White. But he's the guy who has had the least amount of focus, if that's the case. And in which case, you're doing a bad job.
Yeah. Yes. Agreed. To your point about the announcers could help the story along. The announcers are just deathly terrified of John Moxley, though, and put him over as this strong, tough, valiant badass.
Yes.
And
it's very much the bloodline Roman Reigns thing.
Yes. Yes, there's a disconnect. And we may disagree on the extent to which John Moxley sells anything. I guess he kind of has like there's a thing that happens where the babyface sets him up for their finisher, and then either Wheeler Yuta comes in and throws himself on the grenade, or Moxley just somehow escapes, right?
Right.
So they keep teasing it. The problem is he never has to sell a babyface's finisher.
They did it once when they were building up the four-way where Orange and Hangman and whoever like all hit him at once. And it's got a great reaction, you'll be shocked to know.
Yeah.
Because he finally sold something.
Yes.
Like the babyface has finally got a win. But yeah, if a babyface gets a win on AEW television, it's beating up Wheeler Yuta. Which everyone beats up Wheeler Yuta, so that means nothing. Nobody ever gets anything on Claudio. They can't really get anything. I think Jay gave Marina a Blade Runner at the last show.
Yes.
But that was the first time anyone's laid hands on Marina. And then Claudio is, as the heavy, very rarely does jobs or sells for anyone either.
Right.
So yeah, it's not a group that is conducive for. I mean, I think a perfect example of this is last week on the show. They build up to Moxley versus Powerhouse Hobbs in a title match. And it's like, what Hobbs needs is a Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels type guy who's just going to sell and sell and sell and make him look like $1,000,000. And you could beat him in the end, but he's got to look like a monster. And because of the way John Moxley's matches are put together and the way that he chooses to sell and when he chooses to sell, I don't think that match really did Powerhouse Hobbs any favors. I mean, Moxley bled in it and he took his moves and it took, an army to beat him. So you can say it helped, it didn't hurt Hobbs, but I don't really feel like it helped him at all either. So
That
it would be, if you're going to have a long-term heel champion, you do kind of need him to start selling and like showing fear to the baby faces at some point.
Yes. Also, Brian Alvarez reported, and he, what a reporter he is. He reported that Hobbs was scripted to make a one-legged comeback on all the Death Riders after that match on the air, but they ran out of time. So the show ended with Moxley pinning Powerhouse Hobbs, and then once the cameras were off, Powerhouse Hobbs made a comeback and cleared the ring of the Death Riders. Kind of like that time that Brett was in the wheelchair filibustering, and Sean was supposed to super kick him out of the wheelchair, and Brett was still talking when Raw went off the air, and Sean got a super kick after the. So some
Was
people
it an accident?
Some people play checkers, some people play chess. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I just go back to, and this is a larger, what we've been talking about is a microcosm of, there are so many old men on this show now. The tag champs, Jeff Jarrett. The tag champions are Bob Lashley and Shelton Benjamin, who are not a bad act, although they are very clearly a babyface act, even though they're supposed to be heels.
Yes.
Bobby Lashley was like high-fiving kids in the front row after he won the tag belts the other night. It was so funny. You have the Rated R Superstar Cope. You have Chris Jericho. And it's kind of difficult there, which also muddies the stories you are telling, because like Jeff Jarrett is doing this like one last ride. I'm an old man. It's like, okay, he's 58 or whatever he is.
Right.
And 53-year-old Chris Jericho and 52-year-old Cope are on this show as just regular full-time wrestlers.
50-year-old Christian.
56-year-old Dustin Rhodes or whatever he is. Like,
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of old men on this show. And you can connect this back as much as I think most people enjoyed that, myself included. The decision to take the belt off of Swerve and put it on Danielson last year. Like you could connect this back a while where they have de-emphasized guys who you could see them building around for the future at the expense of those guys to push Lashley and Cope and Jericho and Moxley, even, who is he's not 50, but he's been around a long time and he's been in AEW a long time. So it's like it feels like a very old show right now. It does not feel like I think they're trying to do something with Hangman right now. They're trying to do some stuff with Swerve and Ricochet to build them up. Obviously, you have Ospreay and Omega now united as an act on television, but it's like, man, there's a lot of old dudes on this show, and it just doesn't feel exciting. And it feels like a lot of the younger guys who had potential and were gaining momentum. I mean, we talked about that probably towards the end of the year. It's like Ospreay and Swerve were like the two guys that felt like, okay, you've got something here.
Yep.
And now they're kind of just like, they're still beloved. Like they still get big reactions, but it is not the same as what they were getting. Either one was getting like, April of last year.
Well, Chris Daniels had like a 2-week story arc here recently too, talking about old dudes. Hey,
yeah,
I'm probably one of the bigger fans of Chris Daniels' work, even to this day.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing? Does just nobody want to work with Hangman? Is that part of it?
I feel like this is one of those things that it's like it's an elite lore thing.
Yes.
Like, and they did have some footage of like one of Hangman's first indie matches was against Christopher Daniels.
Yeah.
So like, but it's one that's a lot of telling and not showing.
Yep.
Like, oh, he's been a mentor to Hangman. Well, we've never really seen that on TV before, like 3 weeks ago, but okay.
Right.
And then yeah, like he beat Daniels soundly and took his move from him.
Yep.
And so if this is the path, they also teased Hangman and MJF doing something this week. So if we're now going to tease that the wild-eyed angry Hangman is dying and he's beginning to heal, his soul is being healed and he's going to be a baby face again. I mean, I think Hangman's a great baby face, so that would be fine. But and would probably be a guy that I would line up to challenge Moxley. But yeah, at the moment, a little bit jumbled that Hangman betrayed his mentor, killed his mentor, and then made up with his mentor, Christopher Daniels, all of whom we just learned about in the last 3.5 weeks or so.
Yeah. Jeff Jarrett's feuding with the world title, not Moxley specifically. He's feuding with the world title, and he's also feuding with MJF.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. The MJF Jarrett stuff is, I think, the dirt worst. I think.
I didn't mind the first week. Like I
Well,
thought, and then last week they came out and called each other's significant other whores for 15 minutes.
yes.
And that I thought was awful. Not just because of the content,
Yeah.
but because it was just like it was MJF cutting every MJF promo ever.
Yep.
And I didn't think Jeff's material was particularly good either.
No.
So I don't know. It's just and they even kind of had Jeff like apologize for it in his promo this week before they set up the Claudio match. So like even they knew that they effed it up. And it's hard to tell what sits in as like, yeah, that was bad. We need to do something different on this show right now. And what they apparently think is great by what keeps happening on this show every week.
Yeah, it's difficult to discern there. Britt Baker wants everyone to know that she didn't cheat on anyone. She's never cheated on anyone.
Yeah.
Britt Baker's not on TV right now, by the way. And depending on who you ask, it's either a really big deal or it's not a big deal. Or everyone's talking about it, or no one wants to talk about it. Or it's a story, or it's blown out of proportion. Anyway, Britt Baker hasn't been on TV since she crapped on a Serena Deeb match.
Yeah.
I also don't really recall seeing Serena Deeb since then, by the way. Anyway.
She did one match somewhere because she was wearing a shirt that said nobody cares.
Ugh. Ugh. Anyway, Britt Baker is not on TV. There's an overwhelming and overriding sentiment that she's gone as soon as she's contractually able, and that maybe she's joined the Guns and Ricky Starks and folks like that on the bench who are not going to be used because they know they're not re-signing. But anyway, I guess Conan went on his podcast and said he heard Britt Baker cheated on Adam Cole, and that's why they're not together anymore. And Britt Baker, without mentioning Conan by name, in a social media post this week was like, "I've never cheated on anyone ever. Name your source." Anyway, independent of that, I had heard that Britt Baker. I heard the story too. I don't know if it's true or not, but I had also heard the story. So the story's been going around. So maybe there's a smear campaign
Sure.
on Britt Baker, who is was pushed and was very friendly with management and was a big star and probably garnered a lot of resentment in her time on top in AEW. However, she wants us to know she never cheated on anyone.
Yeah. I mean, that was out of nowhere. I was not aware of the Conan comments at the time.
Yeah.
Because yeah, that that idea has certainly been floated on like Twitter, internet wrestling fan, the people that stalk everyone's Instagram stories and things like those people
Yeah.
had certainly floated that as a theory. The Rovert, I mean, Rovert obviously actually talks to people to an extent, but like there's them and then like a level below them where it's just people that scour social media looking for what they like and don't like and
Right.
who was at the event that they were at with them and whatever.
Right.
Anyway, um, shout out to Jey Uso and whatever NXT girl that was.
Jada Parker.
Yeah. There's the so yeah that this story has floated around on social media rumor mills for a while. I guess Conan brought it to the surface by talking about it, which allowed like the wrestling news aggregator sites to bring it up.
Right.
I don't think most of the major ones covered it
No.
until Britt Baker addressed it. But yeah, I look, I can understand why that would stick in your craw if it's not true. Um, Adam
But
Cole publicly said that he still considers Britt a great friend and they wish each other the best. So I'll take his word for it.
but the point of why this is on our talking points here today is what percentage of the AEW audience or Britt Baker's audience listens to Conan's podcast? I don't know. Maybe it's thousands. It's
Sure.
in the single digit thousands. I don't know. But a tremendous own goal to just announce out of nowhere. By the way, I never cheated on anyone. And it's like,
Don't put in
well,
the newspaper that she cheated on anyone.
right. And it's like, well, I mean, an old wrestler mumbling on their podcast about it. I don't know. I don't know.
Like I said,
Someone,
yeah, it's a weird thing. And right, there was the other part, which is that there was already like news items about why hasn't Britt Baker been on television since October or whenever that was that Serena Deep thing happened.
right.
And will she be back at all? And of course, it's like, unfortunately, there's nobody to ask in the company because we hear the same response every time Tony is asked about Ricky Starks or anybody else that isn't going to be back. Um, we'll hear that Britt Baker is a great superstar for AEW, and he looks forward to seeing to continuing to work with her or whatever he always says when he's asked about somebody who isn't on TV.
Right.
So yeah, I understand why it's frustrating. Yeah, it does feel like maybe she's outlived her usefulness to that division. Like that division was so bare bones when she was on top. And she was a great character. She's a great television wrestling character, or
Yep.
at least was 4 years ago. And I'm sure could be still.
Sure.
But you got a lot of better workers in that division now. Everyone except her, like Mercedes Moné, had a better match with everyone in the company except, than the match she had with Britt on their biggest show of the year last year.
Yep.
There were obviously the reports of her having issues with MJF in the locker room and by extension MJF's girlfriend. So yeah, I don't know. There obviously there's the old school, the Thunder Rosa beef
Yep.
from several years back. Like, yeah, there have been stories in the past that she very clearly is vocal when she's not happy about something. And again, doesn't mean that she was wrong to do so at any point or at every point. But yeah, at a certain point, if you don't think she's resigning, that is the WWE thing. Is you keep them on TV and you job them out repeatedly. Tony's thing seems to be you send them home and you pay them for a year. And or however long you can keep them under wraps until they're gone. So I don't know. It's just been it's been a weird week for Britt Baker Goss on the timeline, capped off by her announcing to the world that she's never cheated on anyone. So look, like I said, she's talented. I think she could be a really big star up north if she went there, but I don't know because we also used to hear that Malachi Black was under contract until 2027 in AEW, and he's apparently on his way back. So who knows how long Britt will have to be there if, in fact, she is looking for greener pastures.
Yeah. Would you like to talk about how brave CM Punk is for taking a shot at Hulk Hogan?
Oh, so brave. Loved our hero. Our woke hero CM Punk, who was he stopped wearing those trans rights shirts when he went to and abortion shirts when he went to WWE. It's the darndest thing. Yeah, I look, it was a funny line, and if it was a canary in the coal mine to see how Hulk Hogan was treated in a non-blue state by WWE crowd, it also served that purpose as well. Because Hogan's name got booed again. So hey, we'll see. I think speaking of which, I think he's supposed to be, or at least at one point was involved in a lot of the advertising for this Saturday night's main event. So we'll see if it's a pre-tape or if they're gonna turn him heel or whatever they're doing. But they sure didn't. They really ran with it. Like all of WWE's press sources really ran with that Hogan getting booed thing. In a way that they only do when WWE wants them to run with something. So either they're gonna, turning Hulk Hogan heel would be hilarious. I don't know what purpose that would serve when you're trying to have him hawk a beer on your show that you for some reason bought a minority stake in.
Yeah, so the answer is you have him do the pre-tape and you play it at the start of the show, and that's it. You just cut the Hulk Hogan promo. Yeah. Under no he doesn't have to be there. Why are you going to fly the old man to San Antonio? First of all, he and Jesse might start tussling. It might be a scuffle.
Who would win in a shoot?
Today?
Yeah.
Jesse.
Right.
Back in the day?
He was
probably still Jesse.
He was a Marine. I'll have you remember.
He was a Navy SEAL.
Navy SEAL. That is an important distinction.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's ever been verified. Maybe it is.
I'm not like Sergeant Slaughter. I was an actual soldier.
Well, yeah, or stolen valor isn't a problem with me. But yeah,
I got in a fight with the guy that American Sniper was based on at a bar once.
You remember Chris Kyle? I sued his widow.
Oh man,
yeah,
I love Jesse.
All right, well, Jesse will be there. We'll see if Hulk will be there at Saturday Night's Main Event this weekend, and Royal Rumble next weekend. So, until next time, everybody, I'm Ethan.
And I'm Liam.
We will be back soon with more stories from the wrestling life.
Adios.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Now, here are this week's bonus features.
Go.
I didn't expect it to devolve into dueling Jesse impressions at the end, but I'm very glad it did.
Yeah, Jesse and Jesse. Don and Mike used to do a bit where there was Larry to Larry, and they would each do their Larry King. They would interview someone but they were both Larry King.
That's a good
hello, I'm Larry King, and I'm Larry King, and welcome to Larry.
That's great.
Yeah, it was excellent. Somewhat comedy adjacent. Fraser Observer Radio. I finished the new Fraser series, and it's okay. It's just okay, and it's been canceled, and we'll see if they could sell it somewhere else. I think given more time, maybe I could get into the secondary characters on this new Here Fraser show, but 10 episode seasons, and you could power through one without ads in like 3.5 hours. So
Sure.
that's a plus, but um, it, I think it's gonna come and go without with a whimper, and it probably didn't need to exist, but that's okay.
I guess we probably talked about this when it was coming out. They've
Yeah,
reversed the premise essentially, right? Right? It's like it used to be Frasier and his brother are hoity-toity fancy lads, and his dad is salt of the earth.
correct,
And now he's the hoity-toity dad with the salt of the earth son.
correct.
Yeah,
Yes,
I don't know. I can see why that would work because what else are you gonna do
right.
if you only have him back essentially
Yeah,
and none
yeah.
of the other cast? But yeah, it's well, hey,
Yep, they tried. Um, uh, Roz shows up in season at the end of season 1 as a cameo, and then as a semi-regular in season 2. And
Mhm.
it's like, okay, well, we remember Roz. It's good to have her around. But they do a back to Seattle episode, and they have a bunch of old characters, and it's like, okay, well, what are we doing here, though? Are we doing a reunion show, or are we introducing the all these new secondary characters? I'm not sure they figured out what they wanted it to be either. I mean, 10 episode seasons too. Like for a sitcom, like what?
Yeah, it's
It's
hard
not. It's not a lot of content.
when so much of a your episode run is setting up the farce of whatever
Right.
the episode is. You don't have a lot of time to delve into like figuring that out. Whereas if you're doing 25 episodes a year or whatever, you can
Right. Yeah.
work in some quirky character beats to figure out what the actual vibe of the show should be a little bit easier.
Precisely. And really, the key to the whole thing not working was Niles not showing up for it, and they asked him to be part of it, and he read the script and was like, "I don't think you need me to tell this story." And then, which is kind of a snooty actor thing to say, but I don't know, maybe they just didn't pony up the cash for him. But then they include a character that's Niles' son in the series, and they just write him as if he's Niles.
I see.
it's it's I don't know, kind of disrespectful. There's another episode where Niles is like sending emails, and the character his son is reading the emails as Niles or whatever, and it's like, why don't you just replace Niles if you're gonna do that?
Yeah. This is to compare to something in the first season of the Supergirl show that aired on CBS before getting kicked to its rightful spot on the CW network.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed or chose not to use Superman, but it would be that kind of stuff. It would be he'd be like sending Supergirl emails, being like, "Good job today.
Right.
I sorry I couldn't stay and chat." Like you'd see like his feet, and then he'd fly away. Be like, sorry, I couldn't stay. I was busy, but you're doing a good job. It's like, why even do that?
Yes. Yeah.
Either ignore it or nut up and you're right. Either recast or pay him enough money to do the show.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 I don't know how much the show cost to make, but uh, I saw a video where the set dresser was going through all the things, all the very real, very expensive things that they used to decorate like the apartments in the on the set. And it's like, this is such a tremendous waste of money. Like, we went out and we got, real antiques to put in. It's like, you could have just done a facsimile.
Yeah.
The camera doesn't get close enough to the, African fertility statue that's on the bookshelf back there. No, the camera never gets close enough. You'll never be able to tell whether it's authentic or not.
I try to keep on keeping on.